Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. Today, we're going to dive a bit deeper into psychological manipulation, experimentation, and intelligence operations. Hit like, subscribe wherever you're listening from if you are new, and please share this podcast with your friends. Today's guest is Juliette Engel, MD. And in her remarkable book, SPARKY, Surviving Sex Magick, Dr. Juliette Engel tells her own story of her life as a girl child born into a family of intelligence operatives. In 1955, at the age of 6, she was sold by her father into the CIA secret Monarch MK Ultra program. At age 10, she was selected for Sex Magick because she was tall, smart, and pretty. Throughout childhood, she was subjected to physical and mental torture, including sexual abuse in the process of creating multiple identities. As a teenager, she was trained in the art of seduction, physics, ariosophy, cybernetics, and genocide at the Stanford Research Institute and Hoover Institution in preparation for life undercover in Russia. At the age of 17, she escaped and lived as a free person through the University of Washington undergrad and medical school, becoming a physician, marrying, and having a family without any memory of her childhood. In 1990, she sold her medical practice in Bellevue, Washington, and moved to Moscow to found the Angel Coalition, an underground railroad that rescued and repatriated thousands of trafficking victims, mostly children. Dr. Engel's story will break your heart, but also shows the incredible resilience of the human spirit and how personal faith and God's grace can pull us through any test of emotional or physical strength. Dr. Engel is an accomplished writer, podcaster, and lecturer, having formed an organization called Angels Over America in an attempt to make Americans aware of the millions of missing children and the evils of human trafficking throughout the United States and the rest of the world. Her courage in stepping forward and speaking out about her experiences has helped to expose the links between the U.S. government, MK Ultra, and human trafficking worldwide. So, Dr. Engel, how are things going?
Oh, as we talked about just a few minutes ago, the spiritual attacks are extremely intense. And the technology, which is trying to substitute for spiritual attacks, are also attacking those of us who are trying to think for ourselves and to align with our own divinity and our own spirituality. So it's a real war, but a different kind of a war. So I know that we are prepared to face this. So I'm glad we're talking about all this today.
Yeah, I definitely want people to understand that this is not for entertainment purposes. This is the real deal. This is happening right now, and everybody is at risk. Just the sheer magnitude of it, I feel, is not really understood by the average person. And we have to work a little bit harder to try to get that out there, because we all love our families, and at the point that we're at where critical thinking is a threat to the system, that's problematic. So let's dive right into it. Just give us a short background on your life, how you got into this, how you overcame.
Yes, and I'm going to go right into the issue of how our entire nation has been mind controlled, mind suppressed, dumbed down, and which is the reason we're facing such a crisis at this moment. I was born in 1949. The CIA was born in 1947. I had 5 uncles in the CIA who were at Nuremberg during the Nazi trials. And as a result, and they were all fluent German speakers and very well educated. And as a result, they met with the Nazi scientists who had come from the concentration camps and collected. Actually, the Nazi research on mind control began at the beginning of the 20th century. So these people had all of these records, all of this knowledge. And then when they were turned loose into the labor camps and concentration camps, and there was no accountability, they carried out horrific experiments that could never be repeated in a world where there are human rights and justice and law and order. So these people who had never worked a day, these were all wealthy, entitled people who were all bloodline families. They saw the tremendous potential in taking this work. And they were also aware, because two of my uncles had been at Bletchley Park and worked on the Turing machine. They were also, which became the computer. So they were also aware of the technology wave that was coming. And they saw the potential for taking this mass experimentation that could never be replicated anywhere in the world at any time, and using it to create a superior race of beings on this planet. And I'll get into that a little bit. But so instead of hanging the criminals who had caused untold misery and suffering, and they should have destroyed all of that research. They should have just burned it. But they didn't. They brought the Nazis to the United States, and not just the United States. Most of the countries that were in Nuremberg took a portion of Nazis, and we're learning more and more about that as we're doing MK Ultra survivor meetings in various countries, and we're doing this, and the program is all over the world. So anyway, so in my particular case, my 5 uncles helped bring about 1,500 Nazi scientists to the United States. They went through Huntsville, Alabama, and were distributed around the country and then given unlimited funding. And in 1953, well, the CIA was founded in 1947. I was born in 1949. The MK Ultra program of mind control based on Mein Kampf, which was the MK, and the work of the Nazi scientists was started in 1953. And John has put in the show notes, you've got the links to the CIA disclosures, which came out in December of 2024, and then in October of 2025, where they admit to doing this. So they are now, after 70 years of running this program, which ruined the lives and murdered thousands, tens of thousands of American citizens and millions of American children and foreign children that were brought into the program. After 70 years, they finally admit to it. And so by 1953, they were bringing in tons of LSD, and they were given access to 150 different sites inside the United States to conduct their experiments. The leaders of the program, like my family, put their own children in the program. And the goal of that was that we would be the world leaders. We would be the ones to benefit from having our minds reprogrammed and turned into Turing computers. And so by 1955, I was one of the first children into the MK Ultra program, Project Monarch. And so I started my programming in 1955. I escaped because I want to get into other things relevant to the whole population. If you want me to go into detail about my programming, that'll take up hours. But I want to get to the end, which was 1966 when I escaped and left California and started my own life in Seattle, Washington. I escaped. I'd gotten myself accepted early to the University of Washington at the age of 17. I got up there, started my own life, put myself through college, medical school, started a medical practiced successfully in Seattle, had a professorship at the University of Washington, all without remembering anything about my life before the age of 16. And this is all relevant to what's happening now, because I'm a week from being 77, and I think I'm one of the oldest survivors to be speaking out now, because the program only started in 1953. So there was no certainly Satanism, ritual abuse, all that stuff existed, but it wasn't a government-funded, massive, multi-state, institutionalized program, which it became in 1953. And in the 1980s, they classified it so that it's 18 levels above the presidency of the United States. So MK Ultra is way beyond the president's need to know. It's way beyond Congress's need to know, and it's classified as top secret. But I'm not under any kind of NDA, and neither are the other survivors. And we are the testament for what was actually done in this program. And it's clear to us. We can see what it's doing to our population and how it could destroy the human race. In fact, that is the goal. After I started a practice in Seattle. So for 20 years, I was practicing medicine in Seattle, raising a family. And then I was invited to Russia. So the next 20 years of my life, I spent in Russia, where I helped reform maternal and infant health care, and then discovered the crime of trafficking from orphanages and the tremendous amount of sexual trafficking that was going on from Russia. And Russia was at that time a supplying country, a receiving country, and a transit country for human trafficking. And it was so blatant and so horrific. And some of the children that I knew wound up in trafficking. And so I started an organization which grew to multiple countries in Europe, Asia, and North Africa to rescue, repatriate, and return trafficking children, educate the populations in those countries, and work with training law enforcement on how to work with children so that they could not punish them again and not treat them as perpetrators, and how they could use them to catch the traffickers. So by not terrorizing them, but getting the information from them. And so it was tremendously successful. And over the course of 15, 20 years, we rescued, documented over 70,000 people, brought them back to their home countries or sent them to their own countries. And it was such a shock to me when I did return to the United States in 2010, after essentially being gone for 20 years. I came back and found that the country had changed. I'd been basically away for 20 years. I came back to a different country. And the effects of child trafficking in this country, in the United States, was just in your face, blatant. But the structures to try and solve any of the issues around it or even address it were completely stifled. And the Trafficking in Persons Office, which had given me my first grant to work in Russia as part of it was a State Department grant, puts out a report every year called the TIP report, the Trafficking in Persons report. And it is considered the gold standard for the United States. So if anybody wants to do something like fight trafficking or educate police or get funding for safe houses, the State Department has this report that says, oh no, there's no trafficking in the United States. We're the best in the world. We are number one. We have a total, I think, of the last year, there were like 600 trafficking cases, as opposed to the several 100,000 that there actually are. And so that means no funding for police training, no funding for safe houses, no training for therapists for trafficking survivors, of which there are tens of thousands right now. So I was absolutely amazed. And the fact that the American population would go along with that indicates to me that the MK Ultra programming was so successful. In the 1950s, the goal was to create a population. They divided the population into sheep and goats. And the goats would be people like me from the bloodline families who would rule the country and eventually become cybernetic beings. And the sheep were the ones who were all going to die. So the goal was to make the sheep compliant, obedient, afraid, weak, depressed, and suicidal. And they did that using their wonder drug was LSD. So they started in 1953. They were already importing LSD into the United States. This is the CIA doing this, and they admit it in the documents. They were importing it by the ton and then using it on unwitting American subjects. And of course, that was thousands of children. And their ultimate success in this was that they created Prozac. And with that, and then now that's the most widely used drug, that and its derivatives in the United States, which dumbs you down. It makes you unempathetic, cold, uncaring, disconnected. So they've done it. And coming from Russia, where nobody's on Prozac, and coming back to the United States, where everybody I knew was on Prozac, to me, the population looked like a bunch of zombies. And they are. So I then started looking into my own past, because as I knew that I was one of the first into the program in the early 1950s, but there was still a lot I didn't remember. And it seems crucial now to remember, since I had kind of an insider look at the people that started all this. And it took me many years to get to the point where I did remember. It's extremely painful, because the memories that go into you as a child go in physically they're nonverbal. So you have to relive the pain, you relive the fear, you relive the nightmares, and it's a grueling, awful process to deprogram. And anybody that says, "Oh, you can do that in a blink," or I'm always being told in churches that, "Oh, just a miracle cure, it'll be gone." No, because it's in every fiber of your body. Plus, they fractionate your mind. So they create what's called dissociative identity disorder. But it's not really a disorder. It's an enormous defense mechanism for forgetting things that are so awful that you can't live with it. And it's also very protective to the program, because adult survivors don't want to remember, and they can't remember. And it takes a tremendous effort to remember. And as soon as they start to remember, they run into suicide programs. And you've seen that. I mean, Isaac Cappy, I don't know if you are aware of him, but he came out and he was revealing the truth, and he was trying so hard to get the memories right and all that. And then he suddenly jumped off a bridge. And he was running right into the suicide program. So the voices that had been put into him were telling him he was unworthy, he was wrong, and so much to everyone's surprise, he killed himself. But we're designed to do that. So anyone that deprograms and starts talking runs right into those programs. And you have to learn to deal with that. So deprogramming is extremely complex and difficult, but it can be done. And once it is done, then you are thinking for yourself, and the whole world looks different. And I was missing 6 years from 1961 to 1966. I got everything but that. And it's really just been with the disclosures with TP USA, that suddenly I got my missing 6 years. And I'm going to try and share a picture. I'm sorry this word is on there. I couldn't do anything about it. But this is I saw this in a Instagram video, and I'd been trying to find a picture of this place forever. And suddenly someone had sent me this Instagram video, and there it was. And please ignore the word. This was the only frame that had the picture. And it's the arrow there. What it's pointing to is this enormous structure underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, which really starts from here. This cliff is like 200 feet high. This building is like 500 feet high. It's enormous. It's so big you can't even see the people or the cars. And this place is called Fort Point. And it's this is the Presidio behind it. And in the Fort Point is connected by tunnels to an expansive network underneath the Presidio, which has caverns the size of Bohemian Grove, where they conduct black masses, Temple of Set, all kinds of awful things that I haven't actually remembered, but I do remember this. This is where I was at Fort Point, and there it is. This is Fort Point, this is an ancient structure. This is part of a star fort. This is part of the star fort too, and it's the point of a star. And if you look at it from above, from a drone, even looking down at the Presidio, you can see the star fort. A lot of it was covered over and built on top of. This is part of the original structure, and this is where I was. You can see the tiny cars, and the whole purpose of being here. This was at the time that I was there, which was 61 to 66. The Presidio and Fort Point were this was the head of the Western Command of the U.S. Army. And this is where they had their psychological warfare laboratory. And this is why there was a big MK Ultra an experimental program here. And they were experimenting with all kinds of things, like music, different frequencies, how frequencies affect the mind. At that time, I was an artist and a musician. That's how I started out until I left in 1966 and then couldn't remember any of it. But this is where they wrote, and I was involved in this. They wrote the Satanic Bible. And the people that wrote it were Anton LaVey. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's he was a leading Satanist, but I knew him in his 20s. So he was quite young when I knew him there, but he was still working with, who was he working with? I haven't quite gotten that yet, but they were writing the Satanic Bible, and I was working on as an artist illustrating the pages. And they were also creating the Temple of Set. Now, in my class was Michael Aquino. I don't know if you're familiar with his name. And there were also other people there who are still alive, so I'm reluctant to say their names, but they were there and influential in the creation of the Temple of Set. And the reason, the whole structure of the Temple of Set is satanic worship, and to the cult aspect is that you destroy God. It's the destruction of the divine. This must be destroyed and replaced by man as God. So, and of course, not all man. The goats were to become the gods. And so Baphomet as a character is almost like a joke. It's one of the goats. It's a goat. It's a hermaphroditic goat, which comes out of an Egyptian story on Mendes. It's an ancient story, and but it's the creation of Baphomet. So anyway, all of that, all of these legends, and the ability to mass manipulate through music, through broadcast medium, subliminal broadcasting. I can't listen to television. I hear the subliminal, which is going on all the time on anything that's network. And they sell it. They sell it by the second. So subliminal messaging, most people can't hear, but because I was there on the other side of it, I can hear it. And so it's going on all the time and feeding right into the Prozac brains of 40% of the America's population, which renders them useless in terms of free thought, seeing anything that isn't fed to them through the subliminal messaging, which includes child trafficking and the constant reinforcement that you don't do anything. The government will take care of all of it. No, people, the government will eat you. So that's where we are. And trying to tell people who are on Prozac and hypnotized by the subliminal messaging they're getting everywhere, even your gas pumps. start talking to you, so you're constantly being hypnotized and dumbed down. And these people, AI was a concept in the 1960s. So their entire goal was to create artificial intelligence that would move into the minds of the sheep, control everything, and then they would be able to eliminate 90% of the population. Anyone that wasn't intensely useful was going to go. And this was all supposed to be done by 2010. So the scripts only ran until 2010. And I think that they're sort of flying by the seats of their pants now. But right now, there are hundreds of thousands of people in the United States who have been through the MK Ultra programming. Some of them are recovering, and they're probably your leaders in free speech, but they're being suppressed because, I have been permanently banned from Wikipedia. And the reason, they told me, because I had successfully mounted a campaign against child trafficking in Russia. And Wikipedia didn't like Russia, and Wikipedia didn't like solving child trafficking. So they came to my office in Moscow and told me that I would never be on Wikipedia. So I'm not. This was probably in 2006 that they did this. So there we are. And I think that all of any cult in the United States, any program like TPUSA, which gets massive money, they control the money. So the goats have their fingers on the Federal Reserve dollar distribution programs, and NGOs don't get money. They're kept poor, they're kept suppressed, and organizations like TPUSA are doing what they want. So that's where I am. That's where I am. That's a good stopping point. You must have questions because I've thrown a lot of stuff out there. But it's also key that this is a star fort, and that the trafficking survivors that I know have been finding the star forts associated with their trafficking programming, and the star forts in the United States are difficult to find because they have Facebook built on top of them. They have AI data collection centers on top of them. They have the Federal Reserve on top of them. They have Army bases and Air Force bases built on top of them. And they have Bitcoin and the various currencies built on top of them because they're drawing energy from the star forts. And so this is the tip of a star fort. You can go online and look up starforts.com, and you'll see these structures, these pre-human structures, which go back tens of thousands of years. And maybe the structure that holds the earth together, I don't know. They're all over the world, in every country of the world.
This can go in so many different directions. I know a lot more about this than you're aware of.
I thought so.
I was telling you that I got banned on Facebook yesterday after being a user for 19 years. All of a sudden, it's a problem to post as many times as you want, on certain issues. But I've been pushing the MK Ultra thing for about a year now, and they don't like that. But I've seen, for example, in 2021, 2022 was probably one of my most difficult years because I started talking about people who came to me just for regular hypnotherapy. And all of a sudden it turns out that they've got a story as to how they were trafficked. When I started talking about that on podcasts, being interviewed, then my website, which was hosted by GoDaddy, which we all know is the cult, deleted it. They deleted it. And any other time I tried to create another business website, it didn't matter who the provider was, whether it was smaller or, off market, won't go through. So I have had censorship issues out the wazoo since about that time period. Nothing that I do lasts very long. I've had to start this podcast over about 4 times with different hosts. So I'm at the point now where if I get taken down, if I disappear, then I'm running out of options as to where I can post. So at this point, I'm like, okay, well, let's just go for it. And then since that's what's going on, let's just go for it and tell people what we can while we can. So there are several things that I would like to know. I'll just say them and then I'll let you go into all of it. Let's talk about how the population is being programmed right now and what they're being primed for, what the end goal of that is. And also let's touch on the Epstein debacle, because while that's coming out, that's also a huge distraction from something.
Well, the Epstein debacle is all part of this. I mean, he obviously went through the program. Actually, I met him in 1988, and he and his associates were in the process of buying an island, and they were going to set up an exclusive resort for heads of state. And interesting, he and the other guys that were doing this were all in Iran-Contra. They were all pilots for Iran-Contra, and he was also. And I think he's about 10 years younger than me. But and he wasn't the only one. Everyone in that group was going to get an island and do the similar things. And they were talking to me because I was a radiologist and a technical specialist, and they wanted to know if they could hide personal data and what kind of data they could hide in medical files. Because at that time, we were just moving from analog to digital, which changed everything. So that you could transmit things that you couldn't transmit before using the digital systems. So anyway, what was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
I was saying let's talk about how the population is being programmed right now.
Oh yeah. Well, you could see it. You could see it with the pandemic. The fact that they responded so completely to something that was so ridiculous and something that the medical, anybody with a medical background knew that it was nonsense. I learned in the 1970s that mRNA was not, was a bioweapon. It wasn't anything you could use for vaccine, and that anything with a coronavirus, they mutate so quickly, you can't vaccinate against them. And no one's ever seen one. So this scary thing with all the funnels coming off of it, I mean, it came right out of a psyop lab. So it was a massive psyop. And I think a couple of things. I think the important thing for them was to get the graphene oxide into everybody, and because their goal is to take the sheep and turn them into transmitters, batteries, robots, and you can't do that unless you can transmit directly into them. Now you can send messages subliminally through their brain and through their nervous system, but they want to be able to do it right directly from a satellite into the graphene oxide structures. I mean, they've walked through. People have taken EMF detectors through graveyards, and people that have died from the vaccine emit signals long after they're dead. And it's because they have the graphene in them, which picks up the signals and transmits the signals. So they're trying to turn people into semiconductors, and they are betting everything they have on the fact that AI will take over. And I've never believed that. So way back in the 1960s at Port Point, AI was the end-all discussion, because AI would take over the human mind once human beings were turned into transmitters and batteries. You know, they've spent a lot of time in experimentation. I mean, chemtrails, dropping barium and aluminum, and all the stuff that's in our food and the fluoride in the water, all these things trying to make people into transmitters were much tougher than they ever thought. And and a lot of people have had transmitters put into them since about the 1970s, I think is when they really started targeting individuals with electronic devices. And that hasn't been terribly successful since eventually it kills people. So the end goal is control and for AI to take over the sheep so they don't have to bother with the sheep anymore. The sheep will just disappear. They won't oppose anything. They'll just do what they're told. And the ruling class, the goats, will have had their souls removed. And that was the big part of the MK Ultra programming for the bloodline families. So like my programming, they were after my soul. They wanted the soul out of me. And so people like Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino, who I spent years with these people, they gave up their souls. They give them up out of pain, out of fear, out of threats, and then they get the bling, they get the rewards. And those of us that kept our souls continued to be tortured and threatened, like removed from Wikipedia for life, this kind of thing, if you care about that. And so that was the goal. So now they've got, and the shocking thing, to me, another shocking thing, first big shock was that it was all over this country. And this is what's making people accept child trafficking. And the fact that at least 200,000 children are trafficked within the United States every year, but nobody's going to do anything about it. And the American population doesn't care because they're getting the happy messages. Like, just leave it to us. We'll take care of it. We'll handle everything. We'll just turn it over to Epstein. And Epstein is one of many. They thought they'd always get away with it. And they believe that all that has to happen is that they reach the point where they can flick the switch and we're all hooked into AI and the population no longer opposes them or has a thought about them. So we're in a race right now. Those of us that can think and fight back are fighting the spiritual war for those who can't think and don't want to. So, as you said at the beginning, this is a war. This is a war for the soul of humanity. And if we keep killing our children, there will be no humanity, and that would be just fine with these maniacs. Now, who's calling the shots at the top? I mean, who was running things at Presidio and Fort Point in 1961? Who had the intelligence to come up with these evil plans? I don't know. Certainly, people think Michael Aquino, mastermind, Anton LaVey, devilish mastermind, master of the occult. No, when I knew them, they were like scared young people. And so no, they were all tools. So who was doing the tooling? I'm not sure.
You're definitely right on that. And that's the thing that gets me sometimes with conspiracy theories, and a lot of it's not really the truth. It's just conjecture, and they have some of the names are right. They have some of the instances of abuse and psychological manipulation. They have some of it right, but a lot of it's largely infactual, and that is on purpose, as we know. So what do we do,
Yeah, I think people are struggling to get it right because you don't want to set off a massive witch hunt like happened in the 1600s. Then you're killing innocent people and the perpetrators just walk away, which is what happened then. The reason I'm trying so hard to get to my own memories of that time, since I'm one of the survivors of that era, is that you've got to look at the origin. If you're looking at Michael Aquino, yeah, he was a horrible creature. And he was connected he had access to every DARPA facility, anywhere he wanted to go, anything he wanted to do to torture and harm people. He had that access. Why? Who gave him carte blanche? But he was not the brains. I knew him when he was a terrified kid. He was afraid of me. I was bigger and tougher than he was, so I would have been like 14. He would have been 16. So they were tools too. You've got to go back, not focus on the tools, but who's behind the tools and where does it come from? And I think with the TPUSA, the revelations that are coming out of that. I mean, just look at the organization telling all these lies, trying to cover up whatever crimes they've done and doing it so badly. And I think you'll find that the mind control runs all the way through that organization. And I think Candace Owen might be the person that starts tugging on the MK Ultra string and actually starts getting it to unravel what she's doing. Because she's in a position where she has millions of followers and millions of Americans are watching and wondering what the heck happened. And the TPUSA people are doing such a bad job of covering up. I mean, they should be expert liars, but they're so spoiled. They're so used to getting away with everything that they're not. And I don't know. Anyone that gets massive amounts of money from other cults like the Moonies, like they did, and other countries like Israel and Korea, they're being used.
I mean, we're at a dangerous juncture because
we are.
You mentioned Candace Owens, and then you have people like Tucker Carlson, and we saw what happened to Charlie Kirk. But there seems to be like a limitation on what you can say. So regardless of how anyone feels about Candace or Tucker, they're serving a purpose because at least they're getting some trickle down effect, even though they themselves may not be fully aware of what's going on, or maybe they are. We don't know.
We don't know. And we don't know how involved they are either.
Exactly. So that's the dangerous thing. Everybody loves Joe Rogan, but I've been screaming at the top of my lungs forever that, don't trust that guy. Don't trust anyone that has a significant amount of reach, because you'll find that most of us are capped off at about 10,000 or something,
Yes.
If there's anybody at 20,000, they're lucky now. All of that went away. And so I don't know where people can go. I don't want to be selfish and be like, okay, just listen to my podcast, because, there's little bits and pieces of information everywhere, and it's up to everyone to kind of connect the dots, because you and I, we don't have the time to connect the dots for everyone. We would have to spend the rest of our lives doing podcasts every day, right? Everybody's always asking me, well, how do I find out more? And the only thing I can tell them is you find out more by going inside of yourself and asking yourself some really difficult questions, because I like to call them the cult of global disempowerment. They will never allow the internet to be used for empowerment. People get mad at me when I say that. If you see something on the internet, depending on how far it gets and how much reach and likes and views and all that it has, chances are, if it's got a lot, the seed of empowerment is not within that. So you're still back at square one. You're still back at looking, doing a lot of your own questioning and researching and tracking for yourself to find people like yourself and try to get your book or do things like that. You're going to have to spend some money if you want to get closer to it. So you don't have any options.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You figure the internet and Wi-Fi. I mean, I remember when Wi-Fi was the big demonstration, like, wow, look at this. That was 20 years ago. We've existed for our entire millions of years, however long humanity is, and whatever form we existed without it. We don't need it. And something that's been sort of pushed out of us is our intuition and psychic connections with one another, which are tremendously important and extremely strong between people. So the internet is not the end all be all of everything. And in a way, it's another excuse for finding someone to tell you what to do. Your answers are inside yourself. And if you don't have answers inside yourself and you're seriously missing something, then look at the status of your own soul. And one of the things in Russia that you don't find in the United States is the Russians will ask you, well, how is your soul? What is the status of your soul? What's going on in the inner world of yourself? I mean, that comes up in any discussion. You people are concerned about each other's souls, be it way beyond physical health, because your entire they call it your krugozori, the entire expanded world around you comes from your own soul. So we have as individuals a lot of soul healing to do, and that means getting off the drugs. If you've got Prozac, get off of it. It's very difficult. It was designed to be extremely addictive, and all of those mood enhancers that remove you from your own connection to yourself. It's all very nice, maybe, but you need to get off of that. You're in a boat headed for Niagara Falls, and if you don't wake up, you're not going to get out of it. So internal, aligning yourself with the divine, finding your way in nature, spending time barefoot on the grass, connect to the earth, connect to the energy around you. Realize that, they tell us that only 2% of our DNA is active, that 98% of our genes are just, they call them junk genes, which is ridiculous. We have what the Russians describe as a krugozori, or an environment around us, which probably has, if you have to have a scientific explanation, it's probably the other 98% of you is outside of yourself, that connects in all kinds of ways that you can't get on a television set. So turn off the TV. We're addicted to television. I'm addicted to my computer. I'm addicted to my phone. But I've only had it, 20 years? Before that, I got along just fine. But kids who grew up with it are going to have more trouble, but maybe they'll be smart and be purist. Plus, we have this rim of space junk, all the defunct satellites and trash circling the world. And if that starts colliding with one another, which people are predicting within the next 2 years, it's all going to go away anyway. There'll be no AI, no cell phones, no global transmission, no global weapons, no GPS. And we'll do just fine.
If you don't laugh, you would cry, honestly. This is a serious issue. I mean, all I want to do is get people to understand that you need to take matters into your own hands now. With digital ID looming every day, what are you going to get out of that you didn't have before?
Nothing. Make it easier to find you.
Exactly. And they already know where everybody is.
Well, they're betting everything. They're betting their entire fortune, everything they have is bet on AI being the big thing. They're going to make their trillions and trillions of dollars. Yes, the internet's everything is a military weapon. And exactly.
Yeah.
Certainly MK Ultra is the food, the air, the water. So what does the military get out of this? You'd think I'd know. I mean, I've been in it all my life.
And it's kind of like back to that same point that you were saying, okay, there's tools, and who's tooling? Someone is.
Someone is, and they don't like us. They really hate us.
I get frustrated with the whole, it's the Anunnaki theory, and it's, the 13 bloodlines. It's more than that. It has to be.
It is. I mean, I'm in a bloodline. My family is as bloodline as you get. And they're not terribly bright. They're not organizing this or doing this. And I know a lot of people that are attributed as being the big fortunes behind it all, and they're just as confused and they've got a lot of power and they can be really nasty, but it doesn't mean they know what's going on, because they don't, and they're fearful because they have a lot to lose as they see it. So is this AI just gone completely rogue and pounding us with its stupidity? I mean, AI is stupid. It can't be intelligent. It can be useful just like a computer's useful. It can do certain tasks quite fast. That's nice. That's a good thing. But if you expect it to draw intelligent conclusions and exhibit compassion and figure out your problems, no. No. It's garbage in, garbage out. So whatever some liberal college student puts in during a tide went on the night before, I mean, you're going to get that because it's going to average everything. And it's not going to be the Turings that are going to be chunking the information out. Plus, they've been repressed. I mean, you've been suppressed. I've been suppressed. Anybody that has original content and is tackling the problem is suppressed. So AI is going to be reinforcing the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is take the Prozac, go to sleep, off falls, y'all die.
Yeah, whoever's programming it is going to protect themselves.
Yes.
What got me thinking was you mentioned 1988, and then you said the name of the place is the Presidio. And what came to mind immediately was a movie from 1988 called The Presidio with
really?
Sean Connery.
Oh.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize Sean Connery, he was James Bond. He was all these different significant masculine roles. And that was on purpose because it was about destroying the image of masculinity and portraying a particular type of MK Ultra programming, right? Normalizing it.
Yes.
So that came to mind. I'll have to go scroll through that movie somewhere and see if I can see any imagery that points to what you were saying, like just the layout and stuff. I tell people Grand Theft Auto, the video game, you're probably not familiar with it, but it's something I grew up with. It's a great resource for finding hidden places that are on the map. Like you won't be.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm too old for that. So
right. But everything is so hyper realistic the way that they set up these layouts. They just change the names of places. But if you can look on a map and you can then go through, like run through this world and actually look at the buildings they've recreated, and you can see where stuff is and poke around, which is interesting because I bet if you were going through, I don't even know what version of the game you would find it on, but I'm sure that somebody's built underneath the Golden Gate Bridge and built what's there that you could go look around, how else would you get there?
It's a pretty interesting place. And there's hardly any pictures of it. I mean, they just to have that show up in that one Instagram, there it was. Unfortunately, it had strange words over it, but there it was. So
yeah, isn't that very interesting? Slime toilet, two words that don't go together. Surely it must mean something. I'd be interested to find out where you found that, who that person is.
Oh,
and is that a code?
I have it. I have the video. I don't even remember what she was talking about, but there it was. I mean, as soon as I saw it, I caught it.
Even the person's body language is very suspicious, the way they're just standing there. And then in the corner, you see that, right? And was that done for a purpose? Is that a message to someone?
Me.
Message to you, you think?
Well, no.
Or anybody else?
But it spoke to me. Else? It's like all we're doing these videos. You don't know who gets the information. You can't predict, and the people that you almost want to give it to may not be the people that get the message, and it doesn't matter because it'll get to the people that need to get it. Like the little flash of the picture of Fort Point, and there I had it. There it was. That's where I was, and then I remembered trying to walk across. They would take our shoes away, so we could never get away. And I remember trying to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge barefoot to escape. And of course, I just destroyed my feet.
So let's go a little bit deeper into star forts.
Sure.
Before we get out of here. Tell me everything you know in like.
Well, if you can pull up the website, there's a very good website, and I recommend everybody go see it. And it's called starforts.com. And this creator has collected star forts from all over the world, so you can compare what they look like in other countries. And if you can pull that up, we can look at the typical features. And I, my entire life, I have sought out star forts and walked around them. And this is in many countries of the world, everything from China, Tibet, all over Russia, Crimean Peninsula. Crimea in Russia is covered with star forts. And these are structures that predate humans. No humans did these, but all of our cities are built on top of them. And the military keeps building bases on top of them.
Okay, here we are.
There we go. So let's see. Why don't you hit UK or hit France? Trying to get some more typical looking ones.
Let's see. Click on any of the markers for a star fort's name and link to its page now.
Oh, just pick one.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a typical star fort, and you can see how Fort Point is one of these points. The Presidio is made up of the entire star point, and Fort Point is one of the points of the star fort. And these are absolutely huge. These are like miles across and hundreds of feet high.
Interesting.
There was Sean Connery again. But and nobody knows
Okay.
Just pick one. There.
I'm looking for somewhere that I've been close to, just for.
Oh.
In Altoona, Pennsylvania, Sinking Spring Valley.
There you go.
Interesting. I would not have known that this was here.
But no, you can't know. And we didn't know until the drones started flying over these. And then people started looking on very old maps, like 1500 and before. And sure enough, there they are. And they were discovered when the Pilgrims landed in America. They found star forts. They found them in Virginia. They found them in Massachusetts.
Well, we know history.
And then they covered it up. And I think maybe because they wanted to claim the land, and if there was an advanced civilization there, the complicated things. But, American Indians did not build these things. They didn't have the tools. We don't have the tools. We can't construct perfectly built. Yeah, there we go. There's Nashville, Tennessee, Fort Negley. Huh. They're saying Civil War soldiers built that. Right.
Right. And what would be the purpose of that for Civil War soldiers?
Nothing. They say it was so clever how it was laid out so that you were shooting away. But actually, if you stood on those points and shot, you'd shoot each other. So it's not possible. It was the only possible explanation for what was known at the time.
Wonder if they have any in the Caribbean.
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, there's whole islands that are star forts. There's one citadel that it's nothing but a star fort. It was used as a French prison. And they say the French built it in 1 year, right? Not possible.
Interesting.
And there's a number of different shapes, but they have a typical look. And once you can see how big they are, see how the enormity of how high these walls are. Mm-hmm. And all the tells in Israel are star forts. And so Jerusalem is a star fort. Anything that's way up off the ground is a star fort.
I'm not going to say what this one looks like, but it's very questionable. Quite phallic indeed.
Yes, it's almost like it was like a launch pad or something.
Mm-hmm. It's like something could take off from right there.
Yeah. And these, even on Fort Point, they have these round things on top, and we don't know what they were, or
these things.
Yeah, exactly. They're on every single star fort. You don't know what they were for. And because it's all stone, there's no way, all the carbon's gone. There's no way to carbon date or guess how old these structures are. They're too big. Oh, the one in the Netherlands is quite something. Actually, the one in St. Augustine, Florida, we have amazing ones around the United States. And then unfortunately, a lot of them in the Southwest have those data centers and processing units. And so they're already covered by people who are linking them to AI and to MK Ultra and to mind control and to the destruction of carbon. So if you take the human body and you replace the carbon with graphene, then we're no longer carbon based.
So how does this tie into like deep underground military bases?
Well, I think they are the deep underground military bases, because the reason people can't accept that DUMBs exist, like how would you build them? How can you have entire huge tunnel systems with nobody ever noticing you building them? It's because they didn't. They were already there. So if you look at the deep underground military bases, you're going to find star forts on top of them. And then the tunnels make sense because they were all interconnected. If you look at the island of Malta, the entire island is star forts. Puerto Rico, the entire island is composed of star forts, and there's tunnels underneath Puerto Rico, and they connect to structures that look like they're sunken cities. So all throughout the Caribbean and the South Coast, south of Louisiana, where the land sank, you can see that there were entire cities there, or what looked like they were cities with roads and ports, and except they're big. They're too big for us.
That is disturbing at best.
Yeah, it means that something much, much older than us, much bigger than us, much smarter than us, built all these things and then disappeared from the surface. Are they existing deep down underneath?
So,
or is the world really flat and they're coming and going, from down below? I don't know.
Something that interests me is I've seen them where you go to like certain truck stops in America, and there's roads that go behind these truck stops that seem to lead to nowhere. And when you go behind there, you see like a tunnel, and it's got flags and stuff on the outside of the tunnel. What is that about? Is that insinuating that you can get some level of access to other places across the world by going through these tunnels?
Maybe. We wouldn't know.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to go behind there either.
Yeah.
I never tried to go, but I was told don't go down there, so I didn't go.
I mean, we still, there's a lot of evidence that the world isn't round, It's probably maybe oblong, or maybe the whole idea that we're on the back of a turtle was actually more accurate than we've just been so massively lied to. And I'm just a puny human. But you're right. I shouldn't say that, because I have a human soul, and the thing that is feared by the entity that dislikes us so much is the power of the human soul. We were given this. We were blessed with a a powerful connection to the divine. And you're right that what each one of us can do is you go into yourself and you align with the divine from inside yourself, and you start getting answers.
Is there any particular reason, in your opinion, why they're so afraid of it? Because it seems to be an all-out attack on it.
The human soul? Well, I mean, look what they did to me. I went in as a baby. I was brutalized. I'm still crippled from everything that was done to me. I've got massive problems. I mean, I practically had my nose removed because they were pulling blood out of my head. You can see the scar goes all the way down here. Multiple surgeries to like correct that, and I'm still going. I mean, and it's purely soul driven. I think my body is exhausted, but my soul is. I instead of disconnecting me from the divine, it made me attach tighter. So the big difference between Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, Phil Spector was there. Another nightmare. They gave into it. They surrendered their souls. They gave up. I didn't. I got punished more, and it made me stronger. So that's what they fear, is that is our connection to the divine. And Kathy O'Brien are you familiar with Kathy? Her work. She's my very good friend, and she just wrote a book called Align with the Divine. And it's what every survivor of abuse and mind control and human trafficking needs to do, is to focus on that alignment of your soul with the divinity that's within you and without you. And there you are. Then you've achieved what they fear the most, because you find peace, you find strength, you find healing, and you find happiness. And it doesn't matter how much my body hurts or what they put me through. I have that alignment, and I live in that.
Okay, so let me throw this at you then. There's a lot of people out there talking, and I've had a couple on this show that their episodes have come up missing, because I find that they're not believable. When you probe and ask questions, they don't have normal responses to it. And that begs the question, what distinguishes someone who heals well enough from MK Ultra to be like yourself, that's lucid and can talk about it? And you maybe haven't done all the healing, but you've done it well enough to be able to live with it and move on and create and educate and inspire in a succinct way.
Well, a lot of it is time. I mean, it took me a long time, and I'm 77. That's a long time, and it really wasn't. The healing took a very long time, and really until my 70s, I couldn't even talk about it. What happens when you have, and this is why people who have absolutely, they're telling you the truth, but may sound completely off, is that they have dissociative identity disorder. And that is programmed, that's from repeated trauma to a pre-verbal mind that teaches you to wall off memories and things, and they'll be walled off. And this happens to me too. They're walled off in multiple compartments inside my head. Someone will ask me a direct question, and it's something I haven't remembered, but some other age of me knows it's there, gets it, says it. And I'm like, I didn't know that. But of course I did know that. I just didn't know I know that, because I have the dissociative identity disorder. And it took me a very long time to be able to sort that out. And people that are around me a lot realize that I have to stop, go into my own mental library to find the connection to everything about myself as a doctor. I mean, I am a doctor. I worked in medicine for 30 years, but I'd have to go out of this iteration into my other library. It's not connected. So it makes abuse survivors and particularly MK Ultra survivors sound bizarre because they could have a memory pop out from when they were 4 years old, and even change their voices. So that's why they're afraid to speak. That's why I was afraid to speak. I really couldn't do it until I'd written out everything I could remember. And that's my book, SPARKY, Surviving Sex Magick, which also I think will be, if you go to my website, you can find SPARKY, Surviving Sex Magick. Also my book, Angels Over Moscow, which was my counter-trafficking work, running an underground railroad in Russia. And then Moscow Traffic, which is a novel, but it's really about the growth of the godfather of Russia, the organized crime, and how it came out of mind control programming. So, but you won't find me on Wikipedia.
Well, there are two things that are huge red flags for me. Whenever I see a certain amount of hysterics around something, as opposed to a switch, and whenever I see a lack of intelligence, because these people are not chosen, even as babies, they know your spirit and they know that you're going to be a very intelligent person. They know what you're going to be capable of in the future, and that's why you're chosen. So when I see someone that has a hard time after they've written out everything and gone through all those steps, and they still can't tell you certain things, or they're in denial about certain things, and they get angry at you, and you are helping them, and they're angry at you, then I have to start asking, okay, what kind of programming do they have then that is making them resist help? What's limiting their intelligence? Because there's no such thing as stupid or dumb when you're dealing with human beings. Everybody seems to know what their limitations are. And I have just found that the most authentic people are genuine, like yourself, The person that told me to talk to you is Ann Diamond. And she was like, you got to talk to Juliette Engel. I was like, okay, if you say so, for sure. Because, she told me that you would get it and that you would understand all this stuff way better than the average person. So I feel like it's really important to ask that question so that when people are listening to this content and they themselves suspect that something has happened to them, you have to be very careful because the internet is full of fakers. They may have people that are well-intentioned, but because they can't articulate and because they're not good at sharing the story, they haven't gone through it and healed enough of it to be able to talk about it in a succinct way, then it can be discouraging and create problems for you. It will make you fall into certain other narratives that are not helpful for you. And it's really all about finding that point of empowerment for yourself. It doesn't matter what anybody else actually says. If something resonates with you and you feel like that exists inside of you, explore that.
Yes, the healing has to come from within yourself. No external force can heal you. You need to align yourself, like Kathy says, align with the divine. And she is the most healed, well-adjusted, non-triggerable, amazing person that I know.
I would love to meet her one day, honestly.
Oh, well, we can set that up if you'd like. It's important to talk to you also about the fact that you do hypnotherapy, because that can trigger people into other divisions in their own identity boxes. So you can get stuff coming out that they can't even identify, especially if you're into if you hit a box, it's pre-verbal torture, and you could with hypnotherapy. So that it's pretty. You have to be very aware, and also when they start to remember, you're triggering. The first thing that is programmed into them as these boxes are sealed by the programmers is the suicide program. So they start hearing awful stuff about themselves. It still happens to me. When I get a memory, I start hearing, God, you again, like, what are you? Why are you bothering me? You know, just like I hear my father, and it's like I get all everything I heard back then as this thing was sealed up. I get again, and it triggers the I'm no good, I'm worthless. You know.
One of the things that they come after me for is because when I get interviewed, I talk about, you know, your core reality is not your trauma, and it's not your conditioning, and it's not anything you've witnessed, and it's not even your nervous system being out of whack. It's just that you are not broken, and everything that's going on in your mind is you're protecting an outdated identity.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And if as a therapist you can start understanding people with dissociative identity disorder and addressing that, that's huge. Huge. You have hundreds, thousands of Americans that are suffering with this and can't get at it because it's the blocks that were put in place. I mean, another thing that might confuse therapists is that there's all kinds of satanic ritual abuse cults, and also there's things that were done in the public schools like GATE programming, which is part of MK Ultra, but it was done starting in like middle school. And the people that had the programming, all they remember is getting a fizzy pink drink and then nothing. And the people that do remember little bits, they were shown crazy videos. They were taken on acid trips. They were all kinds of things. And then they remember nothing. So you might have a person that doesn't even remember being in the GATE program that you suddenly trigger that, and they're telling you what happened. That sounds completely out of the bizarre world, but they were like trying to reach aliens and this kind of thing.
And there's something. There's something to that ET phenomenon as well. That's why I've been investigating that as well. There's something behind that, and there's a reason why it's been on cave walls and stuff throughout history. There's a reason for that. And I think that the majority of people, even as experiencers, are missing the critical insight there, you know?
Well, it's ridiculous to think we're the only ones in the universe. I mean, honestly, talk about egotistical humans.
Yeah. When you're talking about like the suicide programming and stuff, I want to say this to people right now at this time, since they're already getting me. I deal with a lot of self-sabotage, right? And so the way that I explain it is I call it the cereal box hypothesis. If you have a program that says I'm not worthy, it doesn't even matter where it came from, whether it came from the world controllers, MK Ultra, within your family system, it's the same phenomenon. So every thought that you have about that idea, I'm not worthy, is like a box full of cereal. Until you take out each individual piece and deal with it, it's always going to be there. So how I end up dealing with people that are like, oh yeah, I just remembered I was trafficked by my next door neighbors, and dark scenarios like that is because we're going through those things and we're pulling those things out. And as you just said, it triggers something else, right? Triggers these memories, and then it gets dark really fast. So the first key I would advise anybody to use to open any door is to figure out where all of those I'm not enough and I'm not safe enough. And, you know, when you see that you pull away from good people that are helping you, it's because safety is unfamiliar. Somebody starts giving you love, you panic and you ghost them, you disappear. That's not a trend that just started because of social media. That's been going on forever. It's a reaction to some type of programming. And is it coming from the media? Did you live through something? Did you witness your parents do it? Were you just taken to a room somewhere and hooked up to something and they beat the life out of you, beat your soul out of you? What's happening? You have to be willing to put pen to paper and investigate those things and empty that cereal box, because all those different things tend to hide other stuff. And so what I'm insinuating here is that there are far more than hundreds of thousands. There are millions, billions of people walking around this planet that have been done something to. And that's what I want everybody to think about. You know, not to then begin to fabricate memories or anything inside your head or connect dots that don't necessarily go together, but really do some thinking.
Yeah, I think that the memories are the first. Just distinguishing memories from things you've imagined or dreamed or created, the memories never change. So I've remembered the experience of being sold by my father the same way, same smells, same sounds, exactly the same over and over and over again since I was 5. Other things, that I could have wrong, or places that I thought I was, but I wasn't, they come and go. I mean, so people, when they're entering therapy, they'll have some things, they may not make sense, but some things that are always the same. And I found smells. I always get into the past through smells. The first thing I remember, and I know it's a memory, is remembering how something smelled, or how someone smelled. I remember the smell of Fort Point. And right now I'm at the point where I'm at that box, which is Fort Point. And I know, I can tell you verbally with my left brain what was done there. But I experienced it all for years. And I'm very reluctant to open that door. But I think it's really important, because the ET aspect, being on the very northwest tip of San Francisco on the Golden Gate there, with all that water rushing past, there was also water rushing through underground in the Presidio, and there was water running under Fort Point. So it was like a incredible energy coming from the water. It's like the water was talking. So all kinds of spiritual things were going on and experimented with, and then twisted and distorted, because they wanted people like Aquino and LaVey and Phil Spector and me to go out there and twist these things and destroy it. So I don't know. The ET connection, the water connection, the smell of the Presidio. Oh dear.
Yeah, it's so very interesting when it comes to connecting the dots between these things. I think that best analogy I can come up with is it's like catching a lizard, but you can't grab it by its tail, right? Because the tail will pop off. So the slow road is the better road to take.
And you can't rush in too fast, or you're going to commit suicide. That's you can't rush the process. And I think that is something really, if you're going to do hypnotherapy, you have to be really careful of. So people have to go into these things very, very slowly. Just like I think your analogy of a cereal box is perfect, because you can't, each one of those pieces is important. And it's like an interminable number of pieces, and the process takes for bloody ever. I mean, I've been working on this for 77 years, and I'm really sick of it, but it's something I can do about that.
Well, this is your reality.
That's my reality.
There's
I could take Prozac,
But you could. No. What I was saying is there's two versions of me that exist. There's me that does the podcast, Boundless Authenticity. That's just me, my personality up front. Then there's the other me that does this kind of work, that's very careful with language, speaks a different way in order to elicit a certain result. And people don't realize that, when I'm on this podcast, excuse my language, I'm just fucking around. This is just me chilling with the guest, asking questions. But you have to be very careful. And a lot of what people think hypnotherapy is not what it is. There's just a lot of ways you can get information without having to go into a deep state of trance. A lot of it's just to do with the right questions. And it's participatory. That person has to be willing to tell you. There's a great book by Dr. Jill Neymark, What Are Memories? Are Memories Real? Or something like that. And, the nature of memories it's very terrible. Memories are skittish. It's like the worst feral cat you've ever met, because as soon as you try to latch on to a memory too hard, everything else in your brain tries to fill in the gaps and recreates another image that's not that memory. So this is why it's important to ask questions like, how do we distinguish a faker from a real experiencer? Because someone could have had something happen to them that was traumatic. And then everything else they say after that is completely fabricated because they latched on too hard.
You're trying to explain it.
Or they fill in the gaps with other people's stories. If you're an experiencer and the instant you realize you're an experiencer, limit your contact with other people's stories. Try to figure out what happened for you first before you end up using other people's stuff as a reference point.
I did that with my book, Sparky. I stayed entirely in myself, which was quite an experience because as an adult, I could look, I wrote it as a 10-year-old. And as an adult, I could go in and fill in things and I knew things about history, but then I didn't. So I thought the most valuable thing would be to do it exactly as I experienced it. So I did it that way. So there it is. And that freed me up to, there's a lot more I've remembered since then. And which includes the research that I was used in contacting ETs. They used us kids. They took us down to the coast of Mexico, and that's another story. We can talk about that. But and Fort Point also was a point where they were working to connect with extraterrestrials between the earth and the sky and the water. But they were trying to distort it. They were trying to use it. It was all about deception. So it was never going to work. Just like AI will never work because the people that programmed it and created it are all about deception and evil and using other people, mind control and destruction. So it's not going to work. It's doomed to fail. We might suffer terribly from it. And it may destroy our physical world, but it's not going to work the way they think it is. They're not going to become gods. Nothing's going to make them gods.
It's all quite delusional, isn't it? And I've been saying this a lot as well. Like these people do not even talk like how you and I talk to each other. Everything they do, it seems to have a level of hilarity to it. They say, okay, what if we did this? And then they just, ha ha ha, that's a great idea. Let's try to make that happen. And no matter what happens, they try to make it happen. They don't care if they run into mistakes or not. They just keep going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. Go ahead.
Did you read the second release of CIA documents? They have a lot of little notes that they wrote to each other, and one would say, "Oh, that was really fun. The experiment failed," which I think means that the kid died, and they were like, "Ha ha ha, lost another one." What horrible monsters! And now it's coming out in the Epstein files, and people can't believe how evil it is, but it is. It is. These are monsters. They need to be removed, finished, condemned to hell.
It's the kind of mentality where you just pour a kettle full of boiling water down an anthill or something just to see them die. That's exactly
just to see them die. Yeah. And they were doing that with kids and snuff films. And
we've talked for quite a lot longer than I thought we would. So let's just wrap it up here and tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes. Please look up my books. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. And Sparky's a great way to look into the life of being a child and how to survive as a child. And so they're on my website at then just my name, JulietteEngel.com. I'm also have a website called Our Country, Our Children.com. And I put up a lot of articles about how the United Nations is being used by globalists to promote the child trafficking, child grooming, and the sexualization of children in schools. All these things, huge problems, but you got to compact it into your core problem, which is yourself, and go within yourself, align with the divine, and start coming up with answers that start coming out your 98% of your so-called inactive DNA. You put it out there, I believe.
You are right. Thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Yes, I think we should talk again.
We will.
And if you'd like to talk to Kathy, I'm sure she'd join us.
Let's do it.
Okay.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.